The yellow line, let's put that into perspective. That withdrawal and the yellow line and that perspective, given the hostage timelines as well, is this a security compromise or is this a calculated risk? Help us understand what might have gone through in the security cabinet, where, mind you, Netanyahu stopped and paused the security cabinet to pick up Prime Minister Modi's call. But that's a separate thing. The yellow line withdrawal, the hostage timelines, and of course, is this calculated risk or is this a security compromise from where the Israeli cabinet is looking at it?
Sure. Everything we do here is a calculated risk. Let's be clear on that. The security apparatus, the military has their own calculations, and that is the areas that need to be controlled. For example, to stop arms smuggling. So, for example, the Rafah, the Philadelphia corridor on the Rafah border with Egypt, was for 20 years the avenue of major arms smuggling, and not just arms smuggling, which is why it was the pipeline to Hamas's economy and military machine. And so from a military perspective, it's imperative that we retain control of that. The rest of it, we want to make sure here in Israel that Hamas does not once again encroach on the borders, something that it did over the years with different excuses. And so it needs to be pushed back from the borders, especially as very cautiously Israeli civilians who used to live along the borders and the ones attacked on October 7th are starting to come back to their homes. However, there is a political issue here and there's a strategic issue, and that is if Israel pulls out entirely from the Gaza Strip as part of this mechanism to get back the hostages, it's from an international legitimacy perspective, much more difficult to go back in if and when Hamas violates the terms of the ceasefire. And so Israel is sort of withdrawing from major Palestinian population areas, but keeping its foot in the door, so to speak, which is incredibly important, because if Israel entirely withdraws from the territory of the Gaza Strip, and Hamas will, I hate to say, but almost undoubtedly at some point violate the terms of the ceasefire, then from an international, regional legitimacy perspective, even the support of the Americans, it's much more difficult to get the legitimacy.
That's exactly what I wanted to understand, because Major, Netanyahu has called this one of Israel's greatest achievements. We all saw that press conference as well. Kushner on one side, Mr. Witkoff. And Mr. Witkoff was sent to the Middle East by the US president even before the January 20th inauguration. And that was struck down. Of course, so much of hectic parleying that happened. But Netanyahu has called this one of Israel's greatest achievements. Is this a domestic political message to his own coalition, or does this genuinely reflect confidence in Hamas's compliance? Because everybody's worried about compliance, and not just from Hamas, from both these sides.
There's three parts to that, and I'll try to be quick. First of all, it is absolutely for domestic audiences. Netanyahu cannot be seen as having basically given into Hamas's demands. Although we have to be clear, there is a small element of that, and that's exactly what the hostages were meant to do. Secondly, this has to be perceived regionally and by Hamas as a victory. And unfortunately, the victories are not always on the battlefield. They're also in the space of perception and communication space. This is not something that could have been achieved a year ago. And Netanyahu has to make it clear, because as bloodied and as battered and as weakened as Hamas is, having lost most of its fighters, almost all of its senior leadership, and most of its weaponry, will still try to claim victory somehow, some way. And so there is a perception game here. There's a domestic audience game here. But there is also a major achievement which does need to be recognized.